Starting off our list at number 10 is Xena Warrior Princess. I bet you didn't expect to see this one. Sure, Xena Warrior Princess started out as a TV show, but the character was popular enough to get a few comic book series all of her own. From bigger publishers too, like Dark Horse and Dynamite Comics. Way back in the day, in her early 20s, Xena proved to be a courageous leader when she led her village against a local warlord. But they were defeated, and Xena, being one of the only survivors, was banished. Eventually, she formed a relationship with another warlord known as Boreas, and she even joined him, becoming a warlord herself. Xena the Warlord became known and feared across ancient China, Siberia, Japan, Norway, Britannia, and Greece as a very capable warlord, earning her the name Warrior Princess, but also the name Destroyer of Nations. Luckily, this destroyer changed her ways and instead became a protector of the innocent, traveling with her companions all across the ancient world. Number 9. Hippolyta. This queen's history begins thousands of years ago. Around 1300 BC, the Greek pantheon held a meeting convened by the goddesses. They were discussing the creation of a race of humans that would champion their ideals. Now, the male gods, including Zeus and Ares, did not seem too interested, and Hera did not wish to go against her husband, so it was left to the other 5 primary Greek goddesses. They decided to travel into the underworld, where they came upon the Well of Souls, where the souls of all the women who were taken out by man's hatred were gathered. The goddesses took these souls and went and dropped them into a lake in Greece. The souls mixed with the clay and the stone of the lake bed to form the Amazons, and the first one to emerge from the waters was Hippolyta. The goddesses appointed Hippolyta to be queen, and they decreed that the Amazons were to spread the message of peace, tolerance, and equality by being super dope warriors. Yes, Wonder Woman is also pretty ancient too, but Mama came first, so here we are.
Hawk Girl. Well, Hawkman recently appeared in Black Adam in the DCEU, which has been rebranded with their highly anticipated reset impending as simply the DCU. Hawkman isn't the only hero out there who is ancient among the Justice Society. And no, I'm not talking about Dr. Fate, who also is pretty old. In fact, many people probably didn't even know that Hawkman was really even ancient per se. He doesn't look old, that's for sure, but he is, in fact. Not in body, but in soul. Hawkman is the reincarnated soul of ancient Egyptian Prince Khufu Qatar. Carter Hall is only the latest in a line of incarnations of the prince in the comics, and his love, Shayara, was also reincarnated as well throughout the years, becoming known as the hero Hawk Girl and also as Hawk Woman. Later, this origin would be retconned, tweaked somewhat, so they'd actually be even older than ancient Egypt, instead becoming ancient aliens from the planet Thanagar, who simply came to Earth. Their original souls in this version of the tale were each believed to belong to Shra and Qatar the Deathbringer, who were both cursed to be reincarnated alongside each other throughout eternity. Number 7. Gaia. Gaia is someone that we perhaps don't think of as being an ancient superhero because, well, we just don't really think of Gaia that much. She hails from Marvel Comics and is the goddess of Earth. Gaia is seen as one of the oldest gods that Marvel has to offer us, being one of their elder gods. In fact, Gaia is kind of one of the only elder gods who could be seen as heroic or good. At least one of I would say she's up there, considering she is one of the few who managed to avoid becoming a demon. She also actively sought out the Demiurge in order to produce offspring that would help to rid the universe of the other elder gods who had been corrupted after they became demonic, giving birth to Atom, who then became the Demigorge, the God Eater. She's probably also one of the oldest heroes mentioned on this list at all, so there's also that. Number 6. Nubia. Nubia is possibly even older than most other Amazons, who are generally known for being old and immortal just standardly. In Infinite Frontier, her story was retconned so that she was no longer a woman held and mistreated against her will for a long time, but a princess reborn in the Well of Souls. Nubia was born from the Well of Souls reincarnated around the same time that Princess Diana was born, and the two grew up often being thought of as sisters. And if you're wondering why I was mentioning that she might be older than some of the other Amazons, that's just because she's reincarnated. So although Nubia in her own form is around the same age as Diana, she also got an old soul, you know what I mean? She would spend many years as the guardian of Doom's doorway, and would act as a loyal supporter to Queen Hippolyta, even when it seemed that she had betrayed her. In fact, Nubia's loyalty to the Amazons in the current continuity has not failed, and she even recently was chosen to be the new queen of the Amazons. And we're not just talking about the Amazons of Themyscira either, but in fact all known Amazons in existence, as there are actually multiple Amazonian tribes in existence throughout the world. Number 5. 5. Lady Phoenix. While I did think that Phoenix was a little too on the nose for my part 1 of this list, there were some who actually requested her in the comments, so fair enough. Some people want to know more about her. And since she was featured in our thumbnail / cover photo for that first part of our list, I felt for all you loyal nerds who came to this part 2, I should oblige you and tell you more about Lady Phoenix. Who is the woman we featured on that thumb? She is also a member of the 1 million BCE Avengers, also nicknamed the Stone Age or Prehistoric Avengers. Before she was the host of the Phoenix, she was simply known as Firehair, named after her bright red hair, which left her abandoned by her parents only shortly after she was born into the world. Anyone who their tribe deemed basically different in some way was sacrificed in this manner. This was also to be the fate of Firehair, but she was rescued by wolves, so she ended up being okay. She grew up among her pack, but eventually joined up with the Tribe Without Fear, a group of prehistoric mutants. Her own mutant powers would manifest, and she would eventually lose her tribe and become bonded to the Phoenix Force. Ultimately resisting its dark temptations, she would go on to become one of the founding members of the Stone Age Avengers alongside Odin. While it was suggested that Lady Phoenix was actually the true mother of Thor, we learned in Avengers 1 million BC issue number 1 from 2022 that her relationship ended with Odin before Thor was born, with Gaia being Thor's natural mother as we knew before, Freya being Thor's adoptive mother, and Lady Phoenix being dubbed kinda like his bonus mother, after she helped Gaia give birth to Thor and saved him from a premature death. And then Gaia was like, you can be mother to Thor too. So we got that all figured out. Sorry what I said on part 1 is not exactly true. Not his mother, well she is his mother, but she's not his only mother. He's got a lot of mothers. Number 4. Artemis. Artemis was also once Wonder Woman, don't you know? Back in the New Earth continuity. She herself is an Amazon, and despite her youthful appearance, like most Amazons, she's pretty old. In fact, in the New Earth continuity, she was also granted eternal youth as the result of a spell that Circe had cast upon her. In the Prime Earth continuity, she is just straight up immortal. She hails from the Bana Migdal, which is a splinter group of Amazons all their own. Like I said, there are many different tribes. Princess Diana of Themyscira and Artemis have often been presented as rivals in the comics, with Artemis often being jealous of Wonder Woman and kind of striving to prove herself superior to Diana. But despite this, she is ultimately a force for good and a hero, though her warrior's heart might be a little harder in comparison maybe to Diana's when it comes to her heroic approach. Number 3. Red Sonja. Red Sonja is an interesting one to think of as old, considering how she is often portrayed in the comics, but like Conan, who I touched on during the part 1 of this list, Sonja herself is also ancient in the sense that she hails from the past, the Hyborian Age. She was a creation of Robert E. Howard's, who initially existed within Marvel, but eventually ended up being moved over to Dynamite when it comes to who owns the right to this fiery, fierce warrior character. The Hyborian Age was actually a pastime in Marvel history, at least that is what we're led to believe based on the fact that both she and Conan hail from the reality of Earth 616. Red Sonja set out on her path to become a fierce fighter at a young age, after she was left orphaned when her family were killed and her people were attacked by a group of mercenaries. Red Sonja hails from Western Hyrcania and often fights to help those who cannot help themselves, even sometimes training those she comes across so that they might actually act as a hero in their own story. She is sometimes also a sword for hire, but generally only takes jobs that kind of fit with her own particular moral code. And she does have a moral code, even though she's a mercenary a lot of the times. Number 2. Shazam. Wait. Billy Batson is super old? No, we aren't talking about Shazam. No, not that Shazam. Not the Shazam formerly known as Captain Marvel. We're talking about the Wizard, who gave Billy Batson his powers and who has also been known by the name of Shazam. Initially in the Prime Earth continuity, we were led to believe that the Wizard was simply someone who bestowed powers on Billy, but we'd later learned that he was actually one of the old gods Shazam would actually get his powers from. This truth of the Wizard's, aka Mama Roggins, aka Shazam's origin would be revealed after Billy Batson was left depowered following the action of Grail, Darkseid's daughter, who basically cut off his access to his powers by untethering the old gods from his magic lightning. While not a direct superhero, the Wizard is a powerful force of good who is even able to help repower Billy from the afterworld in spirit form, finding basically new gods for him to be empowered by. Number 1. Eternal Warrior. Marvel and DC are not the only publishers who have ancient heroes. Even Dynamite, now owning Red Sonja, is not the only publisher with ancient superheroes by any stretch. A lot of people have ancient superheroes. In fact, one publisher that was suggested in the comments that has tons of ancient superheroes is Valiant Comics, so I'm happy to be talking to you about that. Great suggestion. This particular hero from Valiant that we're talking about is Gilad Anipada. Gilad was one of 4 siblings granted immortality. He has used this extended time over his life to train up, becoming a master in many different areas of combat. He acts as a hero in the comics, being tasked with defending the Geomancer of any given generation. Geomancers were kind of born in a line, and they're magical heroes in their own right who were chosen to act on behalf of the Earth as the planet's defender, and who are able to communicate with nature and the Earth. And the Eternal Warrior basically just acts as like their guardian, so heroes protected here.
Kicking off the list today at number 10 is Conan the Barbarian. Conan was born on a carnage-strewn battlefield in the hills of the westernmost region of Chimeria, all the way back in the Hyborian Age, aka around 13 to 10,000 BC. The fact that Conan was born on a battlefield was considered to be an omen that Conan would grow up to be a great warrior one day, and that was not wrong. He was one of the most accomplished swordsmen of the Hyborian Age and is often listed alongside King Arthur, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Zorro as one of the greatest fictional male sword fighters in history, which is a really cool thing to put on a resume. Conan has unusual strength, agility, and speed for a human being. He has lifted immense objects or enemies, even breaking the neck of a raging bull when he was still pretty young. It is said that he has the strength equivalent of about 10 to 20 men, but he has been knocked over by just 2 dudes before, so don't take that as a fact. More often than not, Conan relies upon his lightning-fast reflexes in combat situations, and they very rarely let him down. On top of that, he has a massive level of durability, and through years of dealing with sorcerers, magicians, and witches, he has even developed a moderate level of resistance to magic and mind control spells. Conan is a master warrior. He has a hardy survival instinct, is a master of stealth, and is multilingual. While primarily known as a wandering sellsword, Conan progressively became a master tactician, leading entire armies into battle, and eventually, Conan even became the king of Aquilonia, and also eventually a hero interacting with the heroes of the modern day. In at number 9, it's Red Sonja. If we are talking about Conan the Barbarian, then we need to talk about Red Sonja, because not only is she from the same time period, she's arguably even more capable than Mr. Barbarian himself. Red Sonja lived with her family in a humble home in the western Hyrcanian steppes. I don't know if I pronounced that right, so let me know in the comments down below. When she had just turned 17 years old, a group of mercenaries attacked, taking the lives of her father, Ivor, her mother, and her 2 younger brothers, and burning their house and all their possessions to the ground. Now she survived, but was then horribly mistreated by the leader of that group. Understandably, Sonja raged for some revenge. Answering this, the red goddess Skatak appeared to her and instilled incredible skill in the handling of swords and other weapons under the condition that she would never lay with a man unless he defeated her in combat, which is a weird kind of thing to say, I guess. Going forward as Red Sonja, she honed her skills with the blade and became a sellsword, eventually even slaying the evil wizard Kulan Gath, but he came back. Red Sonja was one of the most powerful and skilled swordsmen in any era, among both men and women. She was also in peak human physical condition, a martial arts expert, and possessed knowledge and experience in fighting the supernatural. And she beat Conan. So.
In at 8, Blue Beetle. In 1964, during the Silver Age of comics, Charlton Comics revised the character of Dan Garrett, the original Blue Beetle, for a new Blue Beetle series. Charlton's new Blue Beetle retained the original's name, but no powers or backstory, making him a different character. This Beetle was an archaeologist version of Dan, who obtained a number of superhuman powers, including super strength, flight, supervision, ability to generate energy blasts, from a mythical scarab that he found during a dig in Egypt, where it had been used to imprison an evil mummified pharaoh, because of course it was, which gave way for the DC Comics version of Jaime Reyes. DC's introduction of Jaime Reyes in 2006 retconned and expanded upon the Blue Beetle mythos, but given that the scarab was found during a dig in Egypt, where it was used as an attempt to overthrow Vandal Savage back in the 26th century BCE. Yeah, that's pretty ancient to me, okay? I mean, the scarab was created by Nabu, for God's sakes.
Number 7, Iron Fist. Fan Fei is the Iron Fist of the Stone Age Avengers, also known as the Avengers of 1 million BCE. Fan Fei is actually the reason why the ritual to become the Iron Fist and gain its unique powers was all about fighting Shao Lao in a battle to the death. This wasn't, however, because Kunlun wanted to challenge Fan at the time and believed she should, be their champion. This actually happened as the result of a punishment. Fan Fei, you see, was a kung fu master who had been trained since birth in Kunlun, but But her curiosity of the outside world caused her to sort of leave Kunlun in secret. She came across cavemen who were helpless against the beasts that basically often attacked them, and she decided she was going to help them. Fan sought to help these people by teaching and training them herself in the ways of Kung Fu. However, it was forbidden in Kunlun to share your knowledge, and when her people found out, they marked her as a criminal. As punishment, her students were brought to Shaolao and basically fed to the dragon. Forced to watch, Fan Fei went into a rage, breaking her shackles, seeking to share in the same demise as her students, becoming deeply distraught. However, when she went up against Shaolao, she struck the dragon and her fist went right through, killing it, and coating her fist in its blood, giving her the power to channel her chi into fiery fists, and leaving her with a dragon mark, which marks her as the Iron Fist.
And at 6, Dr. Fate. Nabu the Wise was a lord of order and cosmic being who arrived at Earth billions of years ago to take on a proactive role in battling the Lords of Chaos. A cosmic being with near limitless magical power, his spirit resides in the Helmet of Fate and is the source of the great power held by those who wear the mantle of Dr. Fate. Dr. Fate is just the helmet. Fun fact, you all knew that. Dr. Fate's origins begin over 10 billion years ago, which I personally think qualifies as ancient, or maybe even older than that, if there is anything older than that. I don't know. My senior year Comtech teacher was pretty old. But not long after the formation of the universe, were there born two elemental forces, the Lords of Order and the Lords of Chaos. You can kind of see where this conflict is going. On the world called Celia, the Lords of Order manifested themselves, the first sentient race in the universe, and a race of incorporeal magical beings at that. After millennia, circa 3500 BCE, the Lords of Order descended onto Earth and then became Nabu the Wise, who was also an advisor to the pharaohs of Egypt. He's old, okay? I don't know what else I need. I said 10 billion years. I think that's pretty solid.
Number 5, Conan the Barbarian. That's right, Conan is an ancient superhero who actually also hails from Marvel. Not only that, but he was also an Avenger. Despite technically being a Marvel superhero, Conan is also kind of otherworldly, hailing from the sword and fantasy genre of comics. Although for Marvel, Conan is still labeled as an Earth 616 character, hailing from their main comic book reality. He does, however, come from the Hyborian Age, an old hero from the past. But he was one of the heroes still summoned by Doctor Strange and Elektra when they brought together their own team of Savage Avengers to stand against the threat of Kulan Gath. This went down in Jerry Dugan and Adam Gorham's Savage Avengers series, which I still really want to read. It looks super good. It just looks like such a great time. And Conan's presence on the team is definitely part of the reason for my motivation to jump into this series, hopefully in the near future. I have a lot of things to read.
And at 4, Mr. Majestic. I put this here because I like the word majestic, but also this is kind of weird. Mr. Majestic is a Wildstorm comic superhero created by H.K. Prager and Jim Lee. He made his first appearance in Wild Cats number 11 as a backup story, but he's known for being the strongest superhero in the Wildstorm universe, and he shares quite a few similarities with Superman. But given that Wildstorm is owned by DC, there shouldn't really be any conflict there. Mr. Majestic is originally from the planet Kara and was known as Magistros, but yeah, this isn't like Superman at all. I don't know what you're talking about. Why are you saying that? He has 2 kids, Kanesha and Magistrate, but there was also an infertility crisis in his homeworld, which resulted in only 1 child per woman. Yeah, so how did this happen? Well, Magistros and Coda warrior Lady Xana, who's also later known as other things, it doesn't matter. They were chosen not to breed, but since Coda warriors became priestesses after giving birth, Xana's mother pretended that Kanesha was stillborn and then claimed to have given birth to her herself. Yeah, so basically Kanesha passed off her daughter as her sister, which is a whole... They're old. It's old. It's an old thing. I don't...
Number 3, Starbrand. Vin is the Starbrand in 1 million BCE. He ends up becoming the Starbrand after leaving his tribe. He left them because he believed he did not belong due to the fact that he realized he was gay. Something that seemed to be unacceptable to his people in that time. On his journey, he sought out a garden he had seen in a dream, which it turned out appeared to be the biblical paradise known as the Garden of Eden. Once he found it, he also found Burke. Also no vowels. No vowels for these people in prehistoric times. The 2 men became lovers, but would eventually be separated after Burke died in a deviant attack. It seemed the deviants wanted the garden for themselves. The attack resulted in a cave-in, and while Burke did not survive, Vin did, finding the body of a dinosaur who had previously been the Starbrand. Vin was imbued with its powers and fought against those who had killed Burke. However, in the process, this also destroyed the garden. Vin would go on to become the hero known as Starbrand in his time and join up with the other Stone Age Avengers of 1 million BCE. DC.
But ultimately, in number 2, Doctor Strange Fate. Doctor Strange Fate is the amalgam of Doctor Strange, Charles Xavier, and Dr. Fate. Yeah, they're present in the amalgam universe of Earth 9602, and given that both the Sorcerer Supreme and Dr. Fate are present, I think that this qualifies as ancient. Dr. Fate alone just makes that happen. Strange Fate learned that 2 keys controlled by Access would restore the DC Comics and Marvel Comics universes to their own worlds, which would result in the destruction of the amalgam universe and therefore him. So, to keep his universe intact, Doctor Strange Fate recruits Jade Nova, Skulk, and White Witch to capture Access and bring him to Strange Fate so that the amalgam universe can remain active. But it turns out that he was actually a part of a problem, or a part of the problem. That's a story for another day. But Doctor Strange, yes, the real one, preserved the amalgam universe in a pocket dimension, essentially making it its own multiverse in a sense. But I also bring this up because I like the amalgam universe, okay? It's cool. Iron Lantern, Lobo the Duck, hell yeah.
Number 1. Man-Thing Sorcerer Supreme. Perhaps even more surprising is a reality where the Man-Things rule the planet. Their version of the 1 million BCE Avengers team is filled exclusively with Man-Things as a result. One of these Man-Things is known as the Sorcerer Supreme on this planet in the reality we know as Earth 91. Unfortunately, we do not get to know too much about this version of Man-Thing, as he is killed by the Masters of Evil when they come to his reality in Avengers Forever issue number 5 from 2022. What we do know is that like Dr. Stephen Strange and many other Sorcerer Supremes, this Man-Thing does seem to possess a cape, although it is a bit shorter than Strange's, I would say. His version of the Eye of Agamotto, or his version of the third eye, I'm not really sure what's going on with this, also seems to be something that he has, but he wears inside his chest, or on his chest. I think Dr. Strange ends up with a third eye at one point, but he's also got the Eye of Agamotto, so I don't know. Instead of Man-Thing wearing this anywhere else or having it on a chain or a necklace, implying, that this eye is a part of him. Or perhaps it's simply, like I said, just a third eye. And it's just on the chest. I feel like that wouldn't be, I guess he doesn't really wear clothes because he's a Man-Thing, so actually I guess it'd be fine. Number 10, the Question. In the Prime Earth continuity, the Question, or a version of the Question, is revealed to be one of the oldest beings in the world of DC. This is revealed after we learn that the Question was one of the criminals in essence that the Circle of Eternity, located at the Rock of Eternity, chose to punish for their crimes against humanity. This group of beings who were punished were known as the Trinity of Sin. The Question would go on to become a hero following this. This version of the Question is largely a mysterious figure who has not appeared as much, probably because the original version of the character, Vic Sage, and his predecessor, Renee Montoya, ended up both returning to the comics recently. What we do know is that the Question had his memory erased from history and from himself, with even his face being left completely featureless, so he could never remember who he was. This was part of his punishment, but also done to guarantee that the Question would not be able to rise up once more as he had threatened to do originally, since he would no longer be able to remember what exactly he had done and why in the first place. So how can he return if he doesn't even know, why he was doing it in the first place? And apparently, we may never get to know any of this either, unless somebody returns to tell the rest of this version of the Question's tale. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you also love superheroes that are surprisingly old, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9, the Eternals. The Eternals are simply a group of heroes most people don't often think of, which is why I'm including them here. Despite them coming to the MCU, I would still say there are tons out there who have fallen off the MCU bandwagon recently and kind of just weren't particularly compelled to watch this film. So there are still a lot who do not know about the Eternals, which is unfortunate. This is a huge shame, I think, because the Eternals are really a cool group of heroes who have existed for millennia. Initially, their origin was that they were prehistoric humans who were basically modified by celestial tech, turned into their own race of beings. Later on, we'd get an additional bit of information on their origin in terms of kind of how they worked, how they operated, with them being resurrected by the Great Machine on the regular anytime they died. That's how they were eternal, almost being like kind of androids with a soul in a sense at one point. The Great Machine is actually also Earth, which is both a big blue ball that everyone lives on and at its core an actual machine, a resurrection machine in part. Its survival is intrinsic to the survival of Earth and all life forms living on it, and it was, up until recently, also tied to the Eternals, meaning that for Earth to continue, the Eternals would also have to continue to be called into existence. The Eternals, being ancient heroes, were initially the enemies of the deviants who were also created by the Celestials. They defended Earth against the Dark Celestials, or they tried to, and have also become ingrained in human mythology, with them being the real-world heroes from ancient epics and folklore.
At number 8, we have DC's The Question, or just Question. Like Stingray, this superhero first appeared in 1967 but isn't showcased very much anymore. Usually teaming up with the Blue Beetle, this superhero got his last solo series in 1987, lasting 36 issues. He originally had the secret identity of Vic Sage, but was later reimagined in the 2006-2007 miniseries 52, and his protege, Renee Montoya, takes over the mantle. This character is just a good old-fashioned fighter, only really having abilities in martial arts and I guess sleuthing since he's a journalist by trade, but he's just got such a simple and cool film noir kind of look, and it would be cool to see him in a lead role again. Again though, his abilities and look are strikingly similar to Marvel's Chameleon, so maybe by holding back on popularizing this character too much, they're just avoiding butting heads with their competitors. Once again, it's hard to tell. Okay, at number 7 we've got Marvel's Dominic Fortune, or Dominic Fortunov. This character is not only old in terms of his first appearance in the comics, but the character himself is aged to the point where it's known to be one of his biggest weaknesses. First appearing in Marvel Preview number 2 in 1975, this superhero needs a comeback for the sole reason that he's just a guy. He doesn't have any powers, but fought in World War II and always seems to be getting caught up in assassination attempts and weird odd jobs. Like one time when he had to babysit 3 drunken actors in Hollywood for a weekend and had to call the cops on them after things got out of hand. And after that, Fortune actually gets recruited to the Avengers by Nick Fury in 1959. He's just a good old-fashioned human superhero who runs into human troubles and stays in his lane, but ends up getting the opportunity still to support the superpowered Avengers with bazooka blasts and covert ops. At number 6, we have DC's Dr. Fate. This guy is old. He first appeared in More Fun Comics number 55 in 1940 and basically hasn't been mentioned again since his death in the Book of Fate number 1 in 1997. So yes, that's a long run, but still I'd like to see more of him. Dr. Fate is a superhero that's got so much going on and looks so cool that I don't know why he isn't used more often these days. His powers come from an incident when he, Kent Nelson, and his father were uncovering the tomb of ancient immortal Nabu, and Kent is basically trained by the ancient being and awarded with the Amulet of Nabu, a cloak, and a helmet. With the training and these items in his control, he has abilities ranging from magic manipulation and flight to invisibility, super strength, and resurrection, among others. It's just a really cool character based on real ancient myth, and I don't see any reason why Dr. Fate shouldn't have another comeback soon. Okay, number 5, Marvel's Gargoyle. This superhero first appeared in Defenders issue number 94 in 1981, but since then he's actually retired and settled down in Greenwich Village. He even opened a restaurant called Isaac's Oysters. But he did go for one more rip for old time's sake, aiding Iron Man on a mission to take down the android Korvac. But that's sort of been it for him. And what's cool about this superhero is that he was sort of meant to be evil, but just chose good. He was formed when Isaac Christians agreed to place his soul inside a cursed gargoyle and do the bidding of the six-fingered hand. This was all in exchange for his issues to be resolved. But then when he was tasked with capturing Hellcat, a member of the Defenders, he couldn't get himself to do it and defied the six-finger hand, and just sort of kept living on as this possessed gargoyle who chose good. He kind of reminds me of Beast. He just has this super wholesome energy to him, and I just feel like he could do for more of that sweet, sweet limelight. At number 4, we have Zeta from Batman Beyond, and eventually the Zeta Project cartoon spinoff. The show ran from 2001 to 2002 as part of a spin-off to the Batman Beyond episode Zeta. This character is so wholesome and doesn't get enough attention, having been last seen 20 years ago in what would have been the final episode of the short-running series. This synthoid was built for the NSA to keep an eye on terrorist organizations, so his abilities are pretty extensive, being able to shapeshift into just about anyone to infiltrate and carry out covert ops with ease. He's a naive and friendly character who decides to go rogue after realizing that any one of his assassination targets could be innocent. Zeta had such a moment and clearly a huge approval rating since his one episode got him a whole series, but at a certain point, the world forgot about such a good and powerful synthoid superhero that definitely deserves a comeback. At number 3, there's Warlord, a character the world hasn't seen since his death in Warlord Volume 4, Issue 12. But there should be some kind of revival of Travis Morgan, who is another character on the list who doesn't actually have any powers, but is just a very well-respected and decorated war veteran. He also looks a lot like Oliver Queen or Green Arrow, which could have had something to do with it. They sort of acknowledge this when they finally finally meet in the same comic, and all of the Seattle underworld mistake Warlord for Green Arrow and attack him on sight. But whatever the reason is, Warlord's legacy deserves to be acknowledged with another appearance of some kind. I mean, the lore behind the character is that in past lives he's been Sir Lancelot, D'Artagnan of the Three Musketeers, and Crazy Horse, among other legendary warriors and soldiers. He's just a great human character with, might I add, a really cool costume and some badass accolades to boot. Bring him back. Okay, at number 2 on the list we've got Komodo. This superhero really was a flash in the pan, only appearing on and off for a few years and having her legacy end with her powers being stripped. For a time, until they're restored again by Cloud9 and Hardball, but that's sort of it. And I think the last time she's been seen is in the Fear Itself storyline, which wrapped up in 2011, which is 11 years ago now, believe it or not. But this character needs to reappear in some way. The superhero was first created because Melody Kusama lost her leg in a serious car accident, and none other than Dr. Connors from, yes, the Spider-Man series, decides to endow her with the regenerative powers of a lizard. Well, not only that, of course, she actually turns into a lizard fully and at will and gains super strength, speed, agility, stamina, all that good stuff. I think this story is a good one to retell because who doesn't love a good story where someone confined to a wheelchair is able to not only walk again, but fight crime and be pretty damn good at it. Okay, last on the list is just my personal favorite, arguably obscure superhero 3D Man. An athlete turned superhero, 3D Man mysteriously gained superpowers after being stripped of his 3 Olympic gold medals. I mean, he was taking steroids, but there's always room for redemption, right? This character first appeared in 1998 and no one ever really talks about him. And to be honest, I didn't even know he existed until I started writing this list. And I want this hero to get more spotlight primarily because I'm a sucker for early 2000s culture, and this character is just such a great time capsule for that period, where everybody was obsessed with 3D for some reason, with DVDs coming with 3D glasses in the case, remember that? And 3D Man has the same nostalgic look to him, with many of his appearances being colored in green and red. If you want to look him up yourself, you'll notice that he originally went by the name of Triathlon and later changed to 3D Man during the Secret Invasion storyline. This guy just looks so cool and hits home with some good nostalgia for me, as well as probably anyone from the Gen Z or millennial generations. And there's also just a silly factor there too. 3D Man needs to come back. Please, can we? Just for 1 second.
Number 10, The Immortal. With a name like The Immortal, you bet your socks this guy has been around for a hot minute. Due to an accident that happened approximately 3,000 years ago, the man who became the Immortal was exposed to an unknown anomaly that gave him superhuman abilities that put him almost on par with Viltrumites, making him one of the 3 known beings in the universe that can make that claim. But outside of his incredible strength, speed, durability, stamina, and flight powers, the Immortal is, you guessed it, immortal. Able to regenerate at an insanely fast rate, regrowing limbs and organs, not needing food, water, or oxygen to survive, and being immune to all poisons, toxins, venoms, viruses, bacteria, parasites, pathogens, and allergens. However, funnily enough, there is a way to, quote, kill him. If the Immortal's head is separated from his torso, it needs to be manually reattached for his healing factor to activate. But despite that, even when they aren't attached, he still remains perfectly preserved until the reattachment happens. He's been around for so long that he's been a knight, possibly under King Arthur as Lancelot, an explorer under or possibly as Christopher Columbus in the Spanish Armada. He fought in the American Revolution, became president of the United States by taking the alias of this guy Abraham Lincoln you might have heard of, and he fought as a soldier in the First World War. In the 1930s is when he officially became a superhero and more recently became a member of the Guardians of the Globe.
And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button? Hey. Click it! Number 9, The Darkness. The story featuring this host of The Darkness is so vicious and bloody, but also just so raw and emotional. I love it personally. While many think of a Jackie Estacado when they think of The Darkness, he is not the only host The Darkness entity has ever had, which honestly, if you're familiar with the story of Jackie, you'd probably also kind of know that because, you know, it gets passed down. In fact, there were many who came before Jackie. Case in point, Estacado, the Darkness host who is a leader of a Visigoth tribe during the final days of the ancient Roman Empire, circa 410 BC. After its downfall had really already begun, begun, and some would say even kind of already concluded, I guess. Estacado is a known rebel against the Roman Empire, and a powerful one at that, wielding the darkness in his fight against the last standing Roman legions. He ends up going head to head with Legatus and his legion after already dying and being resurrected by the darkness twice. While he offers Legatus a chance to surrender, Legatus knows he is doomed either way, since the Roman Empire is coming to an end, and so chooses not to back down, as he doesn't really see surrendering as a real option given the punishment for doing so, were they even able to make it back home at this point. As such, Legatus's legion falls, and Estacado makes plans to march with his tribe to Rome.
Number 8. Black Adam. Okay, so there are two different main origin stories for Black Adam. In the pre-New 52 era of DC, circa 1200 BC, the wizard Shazam became a high priest to the pharaoh Ramses II of Egypt. This is where he met the young prince Teth Adam of Kahndaq. Teth Adam was Ramses' son. Teth Adam impressed the wizard with his fairness and decency, and boom, he was granted the power. But in the more recent continuity, Teth Adam was born in Egypt in the 26th century BCE along the banks of the Nile as part of the Kahndaqi tribe, and it didn't take too long for him to be forced into a life of unwilling servitude. His entire family lost their lives except for his nephew Ammon. Ammon would save Teth Adam's life, which got him the recognition of the wizard Shazam, who turned Ammon into his champion. Ammon shared this power with his uncle Teth Adam, but not seeing eye to eye on how to use the power, Black Adam took his own nephew off the board and stole his power. This was way before he was either banished, stuck in a scarab, or locked away in a tomb, depending on which era you want to talk about. Also, for the trolls out there, I know Adam is primarily a villain, but he has also been a hero, even joining the Justice Society and the Justice League, so get off my back. Number 7. XO Manowar. In the world of Valiant Comics' XO Manowar, a long time ago, aka 402 AD, a barbarian tribe known as the Visigoths were battling the Romans for territory in Italy. One of these barbarians was Eric of Dacia, a warrior of the Visigoths and the nephew of the king. After the Romans sneakily captured the barbarians' women and children, Eric gathered together a group of warriors and went off to attack the Romans at night. On their way to the Roman stronghold though, the Visigoths came across strangely dressed warriors who turned out to be an alien species known as the Vine. Using their advanced weapons, the Vine easily defeated the barbarians, and the remaining Visigoths were taken aboard the alien mothership. Now, whilst being herded on board the ship, Eric and his friends managed to overpower their jailer and escape to find shelter within another area of the ship where they witnessed a Vine ritual in which a priest presented a chosen warrior with a semi-sentient armor called Shanhara. After a number of years, Eric and the others finally managed to gather enough tools and escape their cages. They made their way to the armory where they found themselves trapped by Commander Trill and his soldiers. But in what could have been their final moments, Shanhara had deemed Eric worthy, granting him superhuman abilities and the means to escape his captors, eventually becoming a hero in the modern era. Number 6. Valkyrie. There have been a few people to take up the role of Valkyrie, but the first was Brunhilde. Back in the day, Odin realized that he needed to give man a paradise to live in after passing on. Thank you. Odin chose a princess named Brunhilde to be his Valkyrie, making her responsible for taking the souls of the warriors who perished in battle with honor and bringing them to Valhalla. Brunhilde led the rest of the Valkyrie as a group of warrior goddesses who would appear over the battlefields of mortal worshippers of the Asgardian gods and choose which of them were worthy to be taken to Valhalla. Brunhilde led this group for centuries. Like the other Asgardians, Brunhilde had godly powers, but she also possessed some Valkyrie-specific traits like the ability to perceive and sense the coming of death on a person, the power to teleport to Asgard through willpower, and she was one of the most capable fighters the Asgardians had to offer outside of Thor and maybe a few others. Number 5. Gaia. Speaking of Thor though, last time we talked about Thor's papa, Odin, and for this list, I think we should talk about Thor's mama, Gaia. Gaia was one of the elder gods who materialized on Earth way before any life ever appeared here. Unfortunately, the rest of the gods, following the example of the serpent elder god Set, started consuming each other, which turned all but Gaia into demons. In order to better protect life on Earth, Gaia summoned the Demiurge and mated with it to give birth to her first son ever, Demogorge the God Eater. This Demogorge devoured all the demons except those that escaped, like Set and Chthon. Gaia then then merged with the Earth itself and dedicated herself to guiding evolution, and that sounds pretty heroic to me. She is one of the oldest and most powerful deities in Marvel Comics, which makes her and Odin's eventual son, Thor, even more of a force to be reckoned with. Number 4. Hawkman. Hawkman is a bit of a doozy to talk about. Essentially, he has two main origins. He was either a space cop or a reincarnated prince. Since we are talking old and ancient today, we will focus on the reincarnated prince story. Basically, Hawkman's secret identity is Carter Hall, an archaeologist and museum curator who is actually a reincarnation of the ancient Egyptian prince Khufu. Khufu, who would become known as Hawkman, discovered an alien spacecraft from the planet Thanagar, powered by an anti-gravity metal element called the Nth metal, which transformed his soul and doomed him and his love to be reincarnated over and over and over again throughout time. Some of his incarnations include Brian Kent, the Silent Knight from 5th century Britain, Conrad von Grimm, the son of a blacksmith in 14th century Germany, Captain John Smith of the 16th century, Hannibal Hawks, the Nighthawk in the American Old West, Detective James Wright, a Pinkerton detective in the 20th century, and finally, Carter Hall himself. Number 3. Venom. Since we all know Venom as being an enemy of Spider-Man, it's easy to forget that he has been around for a much longer amount of time than the web slinger himself, at least in the fictional world. The symbiote that later became known as Venom was spawned at some point during the reign of the Dark Elder God Null, which is a long one, and there is no specific Earth year when this happened, so it's hard to say just how ancient this symbiote actually is, but we know he had a life long before encountering Spider-Man. Unfortunately, the symbiote's memories have all been altered or erased a whole whack of times. It has been said that Venom was the 998th of its lineage, hatching from a clutch of eggs in a cavern on Clintar. That's the symbiote homeworld. Though it does have memories of being present on Gore's homeworld as well, so it's a little confusing. Basically, in the ancient past, the symbiote was once the loyal thrall of Null, but at some point the symbiote refused to obey his wishes anymore, and Venom was cast out of the hive, doomed to wander aimlessly across the cosmos. The symbiote eventually discovered the Kree explorers, who decided to harvest it for further study. It was then bonded to a soldier named Tel-Kar and underwent months of training alongside him before they were dispatched to fight in the Kree-Skrull War. Before eventually leaving Tel-Kar, and after a whack more adventures, the symbiote ended up becoming bonded to Spider-Man during Secret Wars. Number 2. Etrigan. Etrigan the demon was the firstborn of Belial, who was such a handful that Belial exiled Etrigan's mother to Masak Mavdil and told his son that his antics drove her away. That's a bad dad. I don't think this is the son's fault. His antics, that we just talked about, ended up even driving Belial out of hell for several decades, returning with another son born of a mortal witch named Merlin. Etrigan was originally summoned to Earth to serve Merlin in a desperate final attempt to protect Camelot from the evil witch Morgane Le Fay. Merlin bound the demon to a mortal man named Jason, and while Merlin went into hiding to rest, these two lived a very long and brutal life through history. Basically, how it would go is that Etrigan incited war and strife, and in return, Jason gained wealth and status. Not a horrible idea, but despite sharing the same body, the demon and his host are usually at odds with each other, and Jason retains a lot of guilt based on Etrigan's actions, which I think played a part in him being a bit more heroic, or as heroic as a demon can be. But finally, in at number 1, it's Thor. Being the son of Odin the Allfather, who appeared in part 1, and Gaia, an elder god who appeared on this list, Thor is incredibly old, approximately 4,000 years, although at other times it has been said to be even longer. Thor has all the incredible powers of the Asgardians, but boosted to a whole other level thanks to his mother's elder god status. As the god of strength as well as thunder, he is one of the strongest Marvel characters, being able to either defeat or stalemate astronomically stronger beings like the Midgard Serpent, the Hulk, the Silver Surfer, Gladiator, and Hercules. His stamina lets him basically fight forever, and he's next to completely invulnerable, not to mention his weather and energy manipulation and the use of his hammer, which make this guy almost impossible to bring down. Even when he isn't in possession of his hammer and is just Thor Odinson, he is still a force to be reckoned with, and especially recently, he keeps getting more and more boost to his power. This character has been around for an incredibly long time, and he just gets more and more powerful as time goes on.
And at 10, Hercules. Hercules. I think we all know the story of Hercules, whatever version you remember. The Disney animated movie, the DC version, the Roman or the Greek version, it's all generally the same thing. And I mean, even after that, this guy has a rap sheet of like 25 other heroic things he did, just like because he wanted to. A major factor in the well-known tragedies surrounding Hercules is the hatred that the goddess Hera, wife of Zeus, had for him. Because while there were many illegitimate offspring that Zeus, sired, let's say, Hercules was the son of an affair that Zeus had with a mortal woman. And not just any mortal woman, but a mortal that Zeus wanted so badly that he disguised himself as her husband in order to lay with her, and ordered Helios, the god of the sun, to not let the sun rise for 72 hours so that his one last night with her would last. Yeah, so not only is he the bastard of a mortal woman, he's also the product of a forced 3-day night, which I guess doesn't really bother anyone living in like Alaska or Norway, because the whole 6 months of night thing, not anything weird.
Number 9. Odin. Odin ended up joining the Stone Age Avengers sometime after he actually was said to have created the humans on Midgard, which was then known as Aesheim. In doing so, he had disappointed his father Bor, who decided to punish Odin by hurting the humans. Now, as someone who often seems pretty detached from human suffering later in his life, it's pretty wild to think that Odin possibly created them and was perhaps one of the first cosmic beings to actually care for them as a superhero. And I know what you're thinking, but Amanda, we all know Odin is super old. Yeah, you know that, but did you know he was this heroic? Because I always find it very surprising myself. Odin ended up returning to Aesheim to act as its protector and also to learn how to better control Mjolnir, which was his hammer at the time. He ended up befriending multiple prehistoric superheroes, joining the Avengers of 1 million BCE, and he also ended up developing a deeply romantic relationship with his teammate, the Lady Phoenix. In fact, it was even revealed that the Phoenix was actually the true mother of his son, Thor, because that's what's happening now, so there we go.
Number 8. Hercules. Hercules is the son of Zeus, Skyfather and supreme ruler of the gods of Olympus, and Alcmena, a mortal woman who lived over 3,000 years ago. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, arranged for her father Zeus to have a half-mortal son to be the world's champion. Zeus seduced the mortal queen Alcmena, pretending to be her husband, King Amphitryon. I'm sorry if I pronounced that too. Alcmena gave birth to the baby Hercules, and as an adult demigod in ancient Greece, Hercules achieved worldwide fame as he became the greatest hero of the ancient world, best known for his 12 labors. As the Olympian god of strength as well, Hercules' strength is unlimited, making him one of the strongest and most powerful heroes in the Marvel Universe. As an infant, he was breastfed by his stepmother, Hera, queen of the Olympian gods, which increased his already demigod physiology to godlike levels. Hercules possessed the superhuman physical attributes of an Olympian god, but interestingly, some of his powers are actually superior to the vast majority of the other gods. Most recently, he has been a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy, but he has also been part of the Avengers, the God Squad, Council of Godheads, the Mighty Avengers, the Secret Avengers, the Defenders, the Heroes for Hire, and, of course, S.H.I.E.L.D. Coming in at number 7 today is Dream. The Endless, featured in DC's Sandman story, are a group of 7 siblings: Death, Destiny, Despair, Desire, Delirium, Destruction, and the focus of our point today, Dream. These siblings represent fundamental aspects and forces of the Vertigo/DC universe, and are all immortal, ageless, and pretty much nigh omnipotent. The parents of the Endless were revealed to be Time, the embodiment of all time itself, father of the Endless, and Night, the embodiment of the infinite darkness that existed before the dawn of the universe, and mother of the Endless. So it's safe to say that these beings are probably pretty ancient, like 10 billion years old ancient. As for Dream himself, or Morpheus, he isn't so much a superhero as we are used to, but he is an extremely powerful, reluctant hero is what I would say, and his journey to that status, from emotionless god to a being displaying very human-like emotions and characteristics, is the fundamental story of the Sandman itself. Dream dwells in a realm called the Dreaming, from where he controls the fundamental concept of fantasy and reality in the universe, as the line between the waking world and the dream world is quite thin. Coming in at number 6, it's Odin. While the god of thunder Thor almost made this list, his father was and sometimes is still a hero, and he is much much older than his son, as you might be able to guess, because father and son relationships be like that. While Marvel plays a little fast and loose with Thor's age, it most recently has been said to be roughly 4,000 years old, but his daddy? Marvel Comics changed Odin's age a few times for the sake of stories, but we can assume that Odin is quite old, far more than a million years, as Odin was part of the Avengers of 1 million BC, and by that time, he was seemingly in his prime like Thor is now. So yes, the All-Father, creator of Asgard and ruler of the Norse pantheon of gods, is pretty damn old. Who would have thought? Not me. But he is certainly no pushover. Being the protector of the 10 realms, he is the strongest and wisest of all Asgardians. In his physical prime, he could lift 90 tons, but that number can be boosted up a whole lot to a whole other level thanks to Odin's ability to tap into the Odin Force, which has allowed him to headbutt Galactus into unconsciousness, which is really impressive. As an example of the power he wields, Odin had a fight with Seth, another god, which was waged on several planes of existence simultaneously and felt across infinite planes of reality. The energy released from their battle was so powerful, it shattered entire galaxies, reignited dying suns, and ripped the fabric of the multiverse itself. So, yeah. He's pretty nuts. Number 5, the Immortal. Due to an accident that happened approximately 3,000 years ago in the Image Comics Invincible universe, the man who became the Immortal was exposed to an unknown anomaly that gave him superhuman abilities that put him almost on par with Viltrumites. Outside of his incredible strength, speed, durability, stamina, and flight powers, the Immortal is, you guessed it, immortal. Oh. Able to regenerate at an insanely fast rate, regrowing limbs and organs, not needing food, water, or oxygen to survive, and being immune to all poisons, toxins, venoms, viruses, bacteria, parasites, pathogens, and allergens. However, funnily enough, there is a way to, quote, kill him. If the Immortal's head is separated from his torso, it needs to be manually reattached for his healing factor to finally kick in. But despite that, even when they aren't attached, he still remains perfectly preserved until the reattachment happens. He's been around for so long that he has been a knight, possibly under King Arthur, an explorer connected to Christopher Columbus in the Spanish Armada. He fought in the American Revolution, became President of the United States by taking the alias of Abraham Lincoln, became President of the United States by taking the alias of someone you may know, Abraham Lincoln, and he fought as a soldier in the First World War. In the 1930s is when he finally officially became a superhero, and more recently became a member of the Guardians of the Globe. Coming in at number 4, Exodus. Grand Duke Benny du Paris was a 12th century nobleman from medieval France, so he is probably one of the youngest people to make this list. As an adult, Bennet was a crusader for the Knights Templar sent to Jerusalem during the Crusades, and he even became best friends with Eobar Garrington, the Black Knight of that era. The two had set out on a quest to find the Tower of Power, when his abilities manifested after an encounter with the Phoenix Force. This granted Bennet some pretty powerful telepathic powers, but pretty quickly, these powers were then improved upon thanks to the mutant Apocalypse, and his ability to augment other individuals. Unfortunately, Apocalypse also caused Exodus to be trapped in a tomb until the modern day when he was awoken by Magneto and joined his cause, which you think would make him a villain, but he has become more of a hero as time has gone on. Exodus is one of the most powerful psionic mutants in existence, with such a pristine use of telekinesis and telepathy that he can even alter electrons and molecules. His power is so strong that Marvel even had to debuff him by making his powers dependent on his or others' level of faith in him. Still, pretty powerful though. Number 3, the Eternals. Way back in the day, the Celestials came to Earth when proto-humans began to emerge, meaning around 2 to 5 million years ago. That's a long freaking time. The Celestial first host performed genetic experiments on those early humans, resulting in 3 groups: the Immortal and Superior Eternals, the pretty grotesque and monstrous Deviants, and just plain Jane regular humans. The Eternals, aka Homo Immortalis, were basically created to defend the planet Earth, specifically from the Deviants, and to serve Celestials. They became somewhat silent defenders of Homo sapiens, that's us, secluding themselves and rarely directly engaging with us. They built super impressive cities like Olympia, Titanos, Oceania, and Polaria, and their names have become intertwined with heroes throughout ancient history, like Gilgamesh. They are all incredibly powerful, and they are all immortal, being reborn if they ever actually are defeated. An average Eternal is intertwined with cosmic energy and can lift about 15 tons without using any form of telekinesis, but a few are able to lift up to 100 tons. Other Eternals specialize in different powers like telepathy and telekinesis, and all Eternals have the ability to join with one another to form the Unimind, made of light, mind, and pure energy. And I haven't even talked about the massive Eternals called the Hex, and I'm not going to, because we're moving on. Coming in at number 2, Eternal Warrior. Gilad Anipada from Valiant Comics was ancient before the rise of the Pharaohs, and apparently will also survive the fall of nations yet to come. Gilad, also known as the Eternal Warrior, is the youngest of 3 Eternal brothers. His siblings are Ivar, aka Time Walker, and Aram, aka Armstrong. They are all immortal and were born before recorded history, so that's a long time ago. The Eternal Warrior himself is a sworn protector to the Geomancers, who are basically humans who have a special bond with the spirit of the earth itself. When the current Geomancer is accidentally taken out by Obadiah Archer, Gilad is driven by his duty to track down Obadiah and exact revenge. Only problem is, Archer happens to be one half of Archer and Armstrong. Armstrong being Galad's older brother that we just talked about, who he hasn't spoken to in decades. Armstrong tries to protect his best buddy Archer from his brother, but the relentless Gilad eventually catches up to them, and the duo's only solution now is to find a new Geomancer. Archer and Armstrong eventually track down the new Geomancer, Kay McHenry, who convinces Gilad to not obliterate the duo, which Gilad is more than capable of doing with his thousands of years of fighting experience, his mastery in tactics, and being one of the greatest warriors on Earth. Not to mention his exceptional strength, inhuman durability, and endurance, and the ability to heal from pretty much any wound. And finally, in at number 1, it's Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter, aka John Johns, or John Jones on Earth, is the last of his race of Martians, and he is extremely powerful, and should never be slept on, but he usually is. He speaks with the resolve and intelligence of someone who's been around for a very hot minute, and that's because he has been. According to DC, he is in the ballpark of around, or over, 220 million years old. John arrived on Earth after he was pulled there through space and time by a teleportation beam during an experiment conducted by Dr. Saul Erdl, who passed away from the shock of actually finding a Martian shortly after this. But way before that, John's race was practically wiped out a long time ago, leaving him completely alone and isolated. But now, pulled forward in time and finally on Earth with no one to tell him what the hell was going on, he eventually used his shape-shifting abilities to become a detective operating in Middletown, America. For a long time, he mainly operated from the safety of his human persona before he eventually exposed himself to the world, not like that, and became a founding member of the Justice League, and also one of its most powerful and ancient members as well.
At number 10, we have Ancient Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider on a freaking mammoth? Are you kidding me? Back when Earth was an untamed land inhabited by tribes of cavemen, the young boy who would become the first Ghost Rider was brilliant among his pack, but he kept this to himself, fearing isolation. One day, a strange man confronts the tribe, swiftly becoming the leader of their pack through violent means, and eventually revealing himself to be a Wendigo before devouring the entire tribe, save for the young boy. Before the Wendigo leaves, he names the boy Ghost and challenges the boy to find him. With everyone he'd ever known gone, Ghost ventures beyond his cave, deciding that if the stranger could survive out there in the world, so could he. Ghost then embarks on a quest to survive and find his newfound adversary. Alone in a new turbulent environment, Ghost nearly succumbs to exhaustion, but at that moment he's approached by a talking serpent who bestows upon Ghost the spirit of vengeance as a means of achieving his goal, transforming him into the very first Ghost Rider. Fast forward 5 years and the stage is set for a showdown. Ghost on the back of a flaming mammoth confronts the Wendigo, engaging in a battle that ends with the Wendigo pushing Ghost atop the mammoth off a cliff, a fall that only the rider would survive. Alone once more, the Ghost was approached by Odin and Lady Phoenix, who would ask him to join the prehistoric Avengers. By the way, if Ghost Rider on a mammoth isn't cool enough for you, then try the Ghost Rider of the Hyborian Age about 990,000 years later, when the Ghost Rider of that era rode a giant spider. The Spider Rider would go on to confront Conan the Barbarian, and while we don't know how that showdown ends, you can definitely bet it would be a battle of the ages. Well, the Hyborian Age specifically. And speaking of which...
Number 9, Conan the Barbarian. Conan was born on a carnage-strewn battlefield in the hills of the westernmost region of Chimeria, all the way back in the Hyborian Age, aka around 13 to 10,000 BC. The fact that Conan was born on a battlefield was considered to be an omen that Conan would grow up to be a great warrior one day. And Conan was one of the most accomplished swordsmen of the Hyborian Age. He has unusually high strength, agility, and speed for a human. He has lifted immense objects or enemies, even using his bare hands to bring down a raging bull when he was still relatively young. It's said that he has the strength equivalent of 10 to 20 men. More often than not though, Conan relies upon his lightning-fast reflexes in combat situations, and they've very rarely failed him. On top of that, he has a massive level of durability, and through years of dealing with sorcerers, magicians, and witches, he has even developed a moderate level of resistance to magic and mind control spells. Conan is a master warrior. He has a hardy survival instinct, is a master of stealth, and is multilingual. While primarily known as a wandering sellsword, Conan progressively became a master tactician, leading entire armies into battle, and eventually, Conan even became king of Aquilonia, wherever that is, and also eventually a hero interacting with the heroes of the modern day. Number 8. Nabu. Dr. Fate is one of the most powerful magic users in DC Comics, but funnily enough, Dr. Fate is just a name used by the wearers of the Helmet of Fate, which was created by the powerful sorcerer Nabu. Nabu is actually billions of years old as one of the cosmic beings known as the Lords of Order. They came into being at the beginning of the universe and struggled with the Lords of Chaos for supremacy. The Lords of Order actually manifested themselves as the first sentient race in the universe, but it wasn't until 3500 BC, in Earth years, that one of the Lords of Order descended to Earth and became Nabu the Wise, an advisor to the pharaohs of ancient Egypt. In the New 52 continuity, he is a bit more human and credited as one of the first discoverers of magic, but regardless, after years and years and years serving pharaohs, Nabu did eventually, quote, pass on, or it's more so that his physical body could no longer contain him, and so his spirit was absorbed into magical items, mainly the Helmet of Fate, allowing him to live on through it and whoever puts the helmet on their head. Number 7. The Wizard. Mamaragan, or the Wizard, or just Shazam's origin story is deeply rooted in ancient mysticism and magic. He was an ancient wizard who once belonged to an order known as the Council of Eternity, sworn to safeguard the realms from supernatural threats. Thousands of years ago, during the days of ancient Egypt, Mamaragan was granted incredible magical powers tied to the 6 gods of Solomon, Hercules, Atlas, Zeus, Achilles, and Mercury. As the wielder of the magic word Shazam, Mamaragan could channel the combined abilities of the 6 figures, bestowing those powers upon a worthy champion. However, when his first champion, Teth Adam, aka Black Adam, fell to darkness, Mamaragan sealed the powers away for centuries. In the modern era, Mamaragan's essence endured, choosing the young Billy Batson as his new champion. When Billy utters the word Shazam, he transforms into the superhero Shazam, embodying the collective powers that Mamaragan once held. Mamaragan's origin story is a tapestry of ancient magic, responsibility, and the passing of the torch to a new generation of heroes who carry his legacy in the form of Shazam. He was a hero, but has kind of become something much more important. Number 6. Hercules. Hercules is the son of Zeus, Skyfather and supreme ruler of the gods of Olympus, and Alcmena, a mortal woman who lived over 3,000 years ago. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, arranged for her father Zeus to have a half-mortal son to be the world's champion. Zeus seduced the mortal queen Alcmena, pretending to be her husband, King Amphitryon, I think is how you pronounce that, and Alcmena gave birth to the baby Hercules. Now, as an adult demigod in ancient Greece, Hercules achieved worldwide fame as he became the greatest hero of the ancient world, best known for his 12 labors. As the Olympian god of strength as well, Hercules' strength is unlimited, making him one of the strongest and most powerful heroes in the Marvel Universe. As an infant, he was breastfed by his stepmother, Hera, queen of the Olympian gods, which increased his already demigod physiology to a godlike level. Hercules possesses the superhuman physical attributes of an Olympian god, but interestingly, some of his powers are superior to the vast majority of his own race. Most recently though, he is a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy, but he has also been a part of the Avengers, the God Squad, the Council of Godheads, the Mighty Avengers, the Secret Avengers, the Defenders, the Heroes for Hire, and of course, S.H.I.E.L.D. Number 5. Anthro. Created by Howard Post, Anthro is considered the first boy on Earth, existing in prehistoric times. He lived with his family during a period when the world was still in its primal stages. Anthro's curiosity and adaptability drove him to explore the challenges and mysteries of a world populated by both primitive creatures and nascent human tribes. Through his adventures, Anthro unwittingly played a significant role in shaping humanity's development and survival, often making use of his ingenuity and courage to overcome obstacles, while also being a part of some modern-age stories thanks to time travel. He's popped up in Crisis on Infinite Earths, Armageddon 2001, Zero Hour, Team 13, and Final Crisis, and he's even been to the Marvel Universe where he interacted with Devil Dinosaur. Anthro's narrative explores the struggle for survival, the emergence of intelligence, and the foundation of human civilization. His story reflects the essence of human curiosity, resilience, and the quest for progress, serving as a symbol of humanity's earliest steps into the unknown. His powers are, well, pretty much non-existent, but he has played a part in some big events and in more than just a background kind of way. Number 4. The Ancient One. Born over 1,000 years ago, the Ancient One, otherwise known as Yao, was a local to the Tibetan ancient city of Kamartaj. Under the guidance of the mystic sorcerer Kalu, Yao delved into the ancient arts of magic and arcane wisdom, eventually surpassing and even facing his mentor. After facing his mentor, granting himself long life, and fighting alongside sorcerer supremes throughout time, he sought out an order of ancient magic users known as the Ancient Ones in order to devote his entire life to their goal of combating evil sorcerers. The youth eventually became even more skilled than his colleagues though, and grew in power so great that he was the first mortal ever of Earth to meet with Eternity, the sentient embodiment of the universe, who presented him with the Amulet of Agamotto and charged him to become the Earth's Dimension's Sorcerer Supreme. After spending a ton of time trying to sculpt a successor and having multiple possible choices, Yao eventually passed on and left the Sorcerer Supreme mantle to Dr. Stephen Strange. Number 3. I, Vampire. Vampires in DC Comics are practically indestructible and can regenerate any damage done by consuming blood. They have superhuman strength, speed, reflexes, stamina, can transform into bats, wolves, rats, and mist, and have enhanced senses and a bit of psychokinesis. But despite that, they do have some major weaknesses that pretty much everyone is aware of, with the big one being the frickin' sun, unless they can find a way to temporarily make themselves immune. But for I, Vampire, otherwise known as Andrew Bennett, the former 16th century English nobleman in Queen Elizabeth's court, he has a peculiar ability to eventually automatically revive himself after he is sent to the grave, even if he becomes a pile of ashes from the sun. He has even survived the end of the universe. I don't know how that's possible. The ability is a bit of a mystery even to Bennett himself. When he survived the end of the universe, it was at the will of the Presence, leaving some to believe that this may be true in all cases, but that's not actually confirmed. Whatever the reason, it has allowed him to survive as a heroic vegetarian vampire all the way until the modern day. Number 2. Dream. The Endless, featured in DC's Sandman story, is a group of 7 siblings: death, destiny, despair, desire, delirium, destruction, and the focus of our point today, Dream. These siblings represent fundamental aspects and forces of the Vertigo/DC universe, and they are all immortal, ageless, and nigh omnipotent. The parents of the Endless were revealed to be the embodiment of Time, father of the Endless, and Night, the embodiment of the infinite darkness that existed before the dawn of the universe, and the mother of the Endless. So, it's safe to say that these beings are probably pretty ancient. Like 10 billion years ancient. They came from the beginning of the universe. As for Dream, or Morpheus, he isn't so much a superhero as we are used to, but he is an extremely powerful, reluctant hero, and his journey to that status from emotionless god to a being displaying very human-like emotions and characteristics is the fundamental story of the Sandman. Dream dwells in a realm called the Dreaming, from where he controlled the fundamental concept of fantasy and reality in the universe, as the line between the waking world and the dreams is quite thin. And in at number 1 today, it's Hippolyta. This queen's history begins thousands of years ago, around 1300 BC. The Greek pantheon held a meeting convened by the goddesses. They were discussing the creation of a race of humans that would champion their ideals. The male gods, including Zeus and Ares, did not seem interested in this, and Hera did not wish to go against her husband, so it was left to the other primary female Greek goddesses. They decided to travel into the underworld, where they came upon the Well of Souls, where the souls of all the women murdered by men's hatred were gathered together. The goddesses took these souls and went and dropped them into a lake in Greece. The souls mixed with the clay and the stone of the lake bed to form the Amazons, and the first one to emerge from the waters was Hippolyta. The goddesses appointed Hippolyta, or Hippolyta, however you want to pronounce it, to be queen, and they decreed that the Amazons were to spread the message of peace, tolerance, and equality by being super dope warriors. Yes, one Wonder Woman is also pretty ancient too, but Mama came first, so here we are. Sorry.
At number 10 is Tigra, first appearing in her own Marvel comic book called The Cat in 1972. This superhero just doesn't get the spotlight very often. Considering she has been a member of the Avengers in the past, it would only make sense that she might appear more prominently in more recent issues, or even MCU movies. But sadly, her most recent appearance was in a supporting role in Avengers Academy between issues 1 and 39. Tigra's powers began as an experiment by Dr. Joanne Tumalo, who gave her powers attached to her costume, and in this form she was simply known as the Cat. But down the line is when she eventually mutated into Tigra, a human-tiger hybrid, through a mystical ritual. She was then bound to a race of humanoid cat people from the Middle Ages, which she could then transform into on command from her human form, using the cat's head amulet. She's a pretty cool hero, so I wonder why they haven't really brought her back in any big way. Maybe they found her too similar to DC's Catwoman, who knows. Next up at number 9 is Stingray, an oceanographer turned superhero who builds his suit in order to explore the depths of the ocean. He helps construct an underwater city covered by a glass dome which he uses to try and grow food for mankind. He first appears in Tales to Astonish number 95 in June of 1967, so he's just on the cusp of the golden age. Just about. This guy is no doubt an older Marvel creation, and if you haven't heard of him, you may not be alone. Although he has appeared as recently as the Iron Man 2020 event, he still only appears briefly as a side character facing off against Captain Barracuda. But at least the writers of that issue probably had the same thought as me, that he deserves to come around again. Once again, my hunch is that he's just a little too similar to DC's Aquaman, which might keep Marvel from giving him any more spotlight than they already have in more modern issues. Although his buddy Namor the Submariner, looks like a carbon copy of Aquaman. But Namor appeared for the first time in Marvel's first ever comic book, Marvel Comics number 1 in 1939, whereas Aquaman didn't appear until 1941. But I digress. It just seems that DC found a way to occupy the underwater superhero market, which keeps us from seeing more characters like Stingray and even Namor more often.
Number 8, Ogon Bat. Okay, Ogon Bat is a unique and cool character in his own right, but he was also one of the world's first superheroes ever, even technically coming before Superman. Originating from Japan as the god of justice and protector of the weak, his origin is that he was originally an Atlantean who was sent forward in time 10,000 years to defend the modern world from evil. He wields a scepter that fires bolts of energy, causes mini earthquakes, and slices through steel. He himself was immortal, could fly, breathe underwater, had X-ray vision, and possessed superhuman strength, speed, and invulnerability to bullets and lasers. He was summoned by a little girl who would call on him, causing a sparkle to appear around, which then turned into a bat, and then turned into the hero when it found its enemy. It's very weird, but we just roll with it. While he initially started as a comic, he also has a TV show that appeared in several different countries outside of Japan, and I think he looks really cool. So, yeah.
Number 7, Cosmic Ghost Rider. Cosmic Ghost Rider is an interesting one. While I initially thought of the prehistoric Ghost Rider Ghost when it came to old Ghost Riders, I realized that despite being from an alternate future, Cosmic Ghost Rider is also ancient. But you know, future ancient. Cosmic Ghost Rider is the spirit of Frank Castle, who ends up becoming the spirit of vengeance after he is killed during Thanos' invasion of Earth. In this version of the story, Thanos succeeds in basically destroying Earth, and by the time Frank returns as Ghost Rider to the planet's surface, it's kinda too late for him to save his friends. He ends up alone on the planet, and after years and years of solitude with no one left to avenge, becomes, well, insane, as I think pretty much almost anyone would. Despite eventually becoming Thanos' herald, CGR is really doing his best to be a good guy. He only ever really even joined up with Thanos because, you know, well, there was no one left and he didn't want to be alone. Before even joining up with Thanos, Cosmic Ghost Rider did attempt to get his revenge on the Mad Titan, teaming up with Galactus, but even Galactus fell in this fight against this alternate King Thanos.
Number 6, Exodus. Grand Duke Benny du Paris was a 12th century nobleman from medieval France. Does that count as ancient? I don't know, anyone who was around then, so I'm taking it and just running with it, okay? Cool. What you gonna do about it? Nothing, because I'm just an image on your screen. As an adult, Bene was a crusader for the Knights Templar sent to Jerusalem during the Crusades, and he even became best friends with Eobar Garrington, the Black Knight of that era. The two had set out on a quest to find the Tower of Power, when his abilities manifested after an encounter with the Phoenix Force, which were then improved further thanks to the mutant apocalypse. But thanks to Big Blue, Exodus was trapped in a tomb until the modern day when he was awoken by Magneto and joined his cause. Exodus is one of the most powerful psionic mutants in existence, with such a pristine use of telekinesis and telepathy that he can even alter electrons and molecules. His power is so strong that Marvel even had to debuff him by making his powers dependent on his or others' level of faith in this mutant, although he still regularly kicks some serious butt.
Number 5. The Old Guard. Can we call the Old Guard heroes? I'm not really 100% sure on that. They're ancient warriors who've been many things over the years. Not all the things they've done were necessarily good, but I would say for the most part, they've tried to stay on the side of good, so I think I'm gonna count them for this list. And that's definitely where they are at when it comes to where we meet them in the modern day. Or at least, you know, the direction they're headed towards, I would say. Initially, the Old Guard were a group of immortal mercenaries led by their oldest member, Andy, aka Andromaca of Scythia, who is thousands of years old. It is in their welcoming of a new member that we get to see some of the good in them, despite them being essentially expensive, deadly, and nearly indestructible guns for hire. Their immortality is as much a mystery to them as it is to readers of the series, seemingly happening to each member miraculously and really without explanation. One minute they were alive, the next dead, and then inexplicably right back to living. In 2020, the Old Guard comics got their first film adaptation through Netflix. As with most Greg Rucka creations, the premise and his approach had me hooked, pretty much.
Number 4. Medieval Spawn. Okay, I'm gonna come right out and say this, I know nothing about Spawn. I did not watch the show, I never read the comics, I really have no right to be standing here in front of you talking about him, but I'm doing it anyways. Don't worry, I'm not actually talking about the Spawn. I'm going to be talking about Medieval Spawn. Naturally, Medieval Spawn was not only a hell spawn, but also a knight living in 16th century England. And if you think about it, knights were almost like medieval superheroes, with tales and stories all their own. Sir John of York fought during a civil war in England, but was released from his service to Henry II after he and 3 others mistook the king's anger for orders and went and took the life of the Archbishop of Canterbury. Now, once he passed at the hands of his king's bodyguards, he was sent to hell for his crimes, where he made a deal with Malbolgia and returned as a hellspawn. He then went around England committing good deeds in the hopes of redeeming himself, but he continues to survive after being basically bonded to his armor and now possessing anyone who chooses to don his helmet. And I need to start reading Spawn. Right now.
Number 3. Witchblade. While most people think of Sarah Pizzini when they think of the Witchblade, Sarah was not the only one to wield the blade, and was, in fact, by far the first. One of the oldest Witchblade wielders was actually Samantha. Samantha hails from ancient Roman times, though she herself is not Roman, but instead was a native of an old Celtic town that they overtook named Cecilia. At least I think its name was Cecilia. There's also a character in the story with her that's named Cecilia, so that's a little confusing, but I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. Samantha was enslaved, but would eventually escape and end up running into druids out in the countryside, who believed she was the one who would be destined to save the other Celts from the Romans. She was given the Witchblade and would set out on a mission to destroy all Romans. While a hero ultimately, I would say, at least of her own story, Samantha's tale and alignment is pretty complex, which is often what makes Witchblade hosts like her so interesting.
Number 2. Martian Manhunter. You know, I didn't actually know how old Martian Manhunter is. I knew that he was the last of his race of Martians, and I know that he is extremely powerful and should never be slept on. And I know that he speaks with the resolve and intelligence of someone who has seen some serious shiznit. But when I found out that according to DC, he is in the ballpark of around or over 220 million years old, I gotta say, I took a moment to just digest that. John Johns, or John Jones if you want to be rude and go by his human name, arrived on Earth after he was pulled there by a teleportation beam during an experiment conducted by Dr. Saul Erdel, who brought him through space and time and then passed away from the shock of actually finding a Martian. This is because John's race was practically wiped out a long time ago, leaving him completely alone and isolated. But now on Earth, with no one to tell him what the hell was going on, he eventually used his shapeshifting abilities to become a detective operating in Middletown, America. For a long time, he mainly operated from the safety of his human persona before he eventually exposed himself to the world and became a founding member of the Justice League, and also one of its most powerful members. Just saying.
Number 1. 1. Ghost Rider. Way before Johnny Blaze was even ever born, there was Ghost. Ghost is the original Ghost Rider, or at least believed to be the original Ghost Rider, the initial spirit of vengeance. Retroactively anyways, as he made his first comic book appearance after Johnny Blaze historically, appearing in Marvel Legacy issue number 1 from 2017. So obviously that's pretty recent, but you know, canonically one of the first. Ghost became the first Ghost Rider during the prehistoric era and did so in order to defeat the mysterious Wendigo, who took over his pack, becoming their leader only to eat the pack members save for Ghost. Ghost would stumble upon a snake and speak its real name in order to become Ghost Rider, the spirit of vengeance. He also has a cool mammoth, or he had a cool mammoth, and then he got another mammoth, and I think that mammoth's gone too, but he likes mammoths. He would go on to join up with the Avengers of 1 million BC.
Coming in at number 10 today is the Silver Surfer. The Surfer was originally Norrin Radd, an astronomer from the planet Zen-La. When Radd discovered that Galactus, the devourer of worlds, had come to devour Zen-La's life force, Radd struck a deal with the cosmic entity to seek out uninhabited planets that Galactus could consume. Eventually, Galactus became aware of Earth, our little green planet, and he set out to make it his next meal. The Surfer arrived just in time to warn the Fantastic Four of Galactus' arrival, which was his initial reveal into the universe of Marvel Comics in Fantastic Four number 48 to number 50. And that started a great relationship between the Surfer and the superhero family. The Silver Surfer's adventures often center on philosophical conundrums as much as physical challenges, and Stan Lee has used the Surfer as a vessel to express some of the writer's own worldviews. But why is he on the list of ancient heroes? Well, we don't actually have a specific birth year for Norrin Radd, but the Silver Surfer himself has stated that it has been a millennia since he was first transformed by Galactus, and he was a mature member of his species when that happened. And that species is a long-lived one, so it's very safe to say that the Silver Surfer is quite old indeed. Number 9. Mystique. To some of us humans, hundreds of years ago feels just as ancient as millions of years ago. Maybe. The Marvel mutant known as Mystique, while you wouldn't think it, has stated that she was not born in the last century and that she's actually over 100 years old. Mystique has a very complex and unrevealed origin. Like, Marvel started by introducing her and have only given us brief moments where she has shown up in the timeline prior to that. So, this point is more so cobbling together various things she and others has said that point to her being quite freaking old. Mystique has been known to be with her wife, Destiny, by 1895, and she stated that, quote, "Solitude was my natural state for 100 years, which basically implies that she was born before 1800. In 1921, she met Logan in Kansas City and they all worked together in Scotland shortly before World War II, but in an early appearance in Uncanny X-Men number 170, Mystique dreamt that she was in the year 1783, which is specified as being 170 years before her birth. As the comic was published in 1983, this would make her 30 years old at the time of the story, but that has since been retconned. So as I said, it's a little convoluted. Despite the fact that it is unknown when exactly she was born, it can be assumed that Mystique was born in the month of September, because apparently her birthstone is a sapphire. Twinning. While she might not be as ancient as others on this list, she is still much older than you think and an incredibly hard mutant to bring down.
Moving on to number 8, we have Odin Borson. Wait, did any of you guys know that the Allfather's last name is Borson? Just me? Okay. Odin, born from the union of Bor, the son of Buri, and Besla, a giantess, emerged alongside his brothers Kul, Vilai, and Vis. I definitely butchered that, I'm so sorry. Together, these divine siblings embarked on a cosmic odyssey that would reshape reality itself. They dared to challenge Ymir, the frost giant, forging the very fabric of the cosmos and existence itself from Ymir's remains. Asgard, the celestial realm, blossomed from the remnants of Ymir, becoming the abode of gods in the heart of their dominion. Yet Odin's exploits were not limited to creation alone. One day, a sentient and all-powerful storm known as the God Tempest threatened the sanctity of Asgard. Odin, as mighty as the storm was, stood resolute against its fury, and with a display of power that echoed through the cosmos, Odin quelled the Tempest, imprisoning its essence within a fragment of Uru, which would one day become the legendary Mjolnir, a symbol of power and worthiness. Sometime after forging Mjolnir, but long before the birth of Thor, Odin descended upon Midgard, then known as Aesheim, where he bestowed upon the world the gift of humanity. However, even the god's benevolence can be tempered with enigmatic purpose. Bor, his father, was not entirely pleased with Odin's creation, casting upon humanity the mantle of suffering. As eons swept by, Odin's saga intertwined with the Stone Age. See, Mjolnir proved difficult to wield, leading Odin to forge an alliance with mystically empowered prehistoric humans. Together they united as the Stone Age Avengers, the guardians of Earth's fragile yet flourishing existence.
Number 7. The Immortal. Due to an accident that happened approximately 3,000 years ago, the man who became Invincible's Immortal was exposed to an unknown anomaly that gave him superhuman abilities that put him almost on par with Viltrumites, making him one of 3 known beings in the universe that can make that claim. But outside of his incredible strength, speed, durability, stamina, and flight powers, the Immortal is, you guessed it, immortal. Able to regenerate at an insanely fast rate, regrowing limbs and organs, not needing food, water, or oxygen to survive, and being immune to all poisons, toxins, venoms, viruses, bacteria, parasites, pathogens, and allergens. However, funnily enough, there is a way to, quote, kill him. If the Immortal's head is separated from his torso, it needs to be manually reattached for his healing factor to activate. But despite that, even when they aren't attached, he still remains perfectly preserved until the reattachment happens. He's been around for so long that he has been a knight, possibly under King Arthur as Lancelot, an explorer under or possibly as Christopher Columbus in the Spanish Armada. He fought in the American Revolution, became president of the United States by taking the alias of this guy you may know called Abraham Lincoln, and he fought as a soldier in the First World War. In the 1930s is when he officially became a superhero and more recently became a member of the Guardians of the Globe.
At number 6 is Phoenix. We begin with an abandoned infant named Firehair left to her own devices at a place aptly named the Burnt Place. It wasn't a cozy nursery, mind you, but a clearing where xenophobic tribes tried to sacrifice anyone who manifested appearances which strayed from their norm, in this case the child's red hair. The abandoned infant found herself being raised by an unlikely family, a pack of wolves. Wolves, the original guardians of the forest. Perhaps a canine paw father is what every superhero needs. One fateful day, Firehair's solitude was interrupted by a floating man who conversed through thoughts. No need for that pesky small talk. This floating mentor, which Firehair fondly dubbed as the High Walker, introduced her to a congregation of adopted mutants called the Tribe Without Fear, offering refuge and training. Fast forward, and Firehair's psychic abilities awakened just in time to sound the alarm about an impending attack from the xenophobes from earlier. As the High Walker faced off against the invading tribesmen, Firehair's psyche is overwhelmed by the storm of human emotion. Sadly, the High Walker meets his end while trying to calm her. Firehair fainted as her fellow pupils gave into rage and fought the attacking tribesmen, resulting in the demise of everyone present save for herself. Firehair blamed herself for her mentor and friend's demise and was overcome with despair, contemplating turning her powers on herself to unalive herself, returning to the Burnt Place to be eaten by buzzards. As she lay awaiting her demise, the Phoenix Force, an ancient cosmic entity with a penchant for turning planets into cinder, who had created the Burnt Place when it first arrived on Earth, bonds with Firehair, having been drawn to her raw and untapped psychic power. Consumed by a vengeful rage, Firehair almost gave in to the bloodlust and became a Dark Phoenix, but she was pacified thanks to the one who had saved her as an infant, her paw father, if you will. From that day forward, she would take a page out of the Wolf playbook and decide to protect the weak rather than lay waste to the universe. Realizing the threat that beings such as herself posed to the integrity of Earth, she began assembling a team of supernatural and mystically augmented heroes to protect the nation's humanity from both outside threats and themselves, and thus founding the Avengers of the Stone Age.
Number 5. Exodus. Grand Duke Benny du Perry was a 12th century nobleman from medieval France in Marvel Comics. Does that count as ancient? I don't know anyone who's around then, so I'm taking it and running with it. What are you gonna do about it? Nothing, because I'm just an image on your screen. As an adult, Benny was a crusader for the Knights Templar sent to Jerusalem during the Crusades, and he even became best friends with Eobard Garrington, aka the Black Knight of that era. The two had set out on a quest to find the Tower of Power, which is a stupid name, when his abilities manifested after an encounter with the Phoenix Force, which were then improved further thanks to the mutant apocalypse. But thanks to Big Blue, Exodus was trapped in a tomb until the modern day, when he was awoken by Magneto and joined his cause. Exodus is one of the most powerful psionic mutants in existence, with such a pristine use of telekinesis and telepathy that he can even alter electrons and molecules. His power is so strong that Marvel even had to debuff him by making his powers dependent on his or others' level of faith in this mutant, although he still regularly kicks some serious butt.
At number 4 is Agamotto. Now, speaking of ancient superheroes, let's uncover a figure whose power and influence might just leave you spellbound. No, he's not your everyday magician pulling rabbits out of hats. We're talking about the cosmic conjurer who would give Doctor Strange a run for his money. Imagine being tutored by a deity, Oshurdur no less, the literal elder goddess of Earth. But Agamotto wasn't just a student student, he went on to become Earth's very first Sorcerer Supreme. Agamotto would go on to face cosmic threats like the Fallen, and yes, even Dormammu, which he thwarted alongside the Stone Age Avengers. Now let's talk artifact. The legend of Agamotto was like an Indiana Jones fever dream, as he'd created magical treasures that would make a dragon's hoard look like pocket change. First off, we got the eyes, that's right, eyes, plural, of Agamotto. You might remember one of those as the pendant in Doctor Strange's possession that guards the Time Stone. Well, Agamotto made not one, not two, but three of them bad boys. But their intended purpose wasn't meant to guard Infinity Stones or serve as reading glasses. These peepers could pierce through dimensions, unlocking knowledge that could make Google's search engine blush. Ever heard of the Book of Vishanti? Yup, that was Agamotto's brainchild too, an enchanted book that's like Wikipedia but for spells. Agamotto went from being a mere mortal sorcerer supreme to being a bona fide higher being, a principality. Essentially, imagine a being so magically advanced that you become a go-to power source for other sorcerers, sort of like being the neighborhood electrician for the mystical realm. So there you have it, Agamotto, the ancient superhero who wasn't just reading spells from a dusty book, he was writing them into that dusty book, shaping the very fabric of reality, defending Earth from cosmic threats, and leaving behind a trail of magical breadcrumbs for future sorcerers to follow.
Number 3. Starbrand Vin. The Starbrand itself is an incredible source of power, proven by other people who have wielded it. The bearer of Earth 723's Starbrand used the power to create music that influenced human behavior to the extent that he has unified the people of his world as a single hive mind. Earth 541 is the home of a Starbrand bearer who has conquered his world and installed himself as the head of a benevolent monarchical dictatorship, but like a good one that actually somehow works despite the lack of freedoms. Thing is, what the Starbrand is capable of is dependent on its wielder's imagination. When it first showed up on Earth, it was millions and millions of years ago, coming down with a meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs, but in doing so, it bonded itself to a Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is absolutely awesome. After a few millions of years though, that T-Rex had gone belly up, and the Starbrand found a new bearer in the form of a caveman named Vin. It's just VNN, I don't know why it's pronounced like that. Interestingly though, when Vin came upon the Starbrand and used it to join up with the Avengers 1 million BC, he was actually more analogous to like the Hulk, at least in his looks, and he had a more primitive use of the Starbrand than other future bearers. But he did live on the moon for a bit and help fight a Celestial, so don't get it twisted, he did more than just punch stuff.
At number 2 is the first Black Panther. Meet Mosi, a member of the Black Panther tribe in the legendary land of Wakanda. Now, he wasn't the first of his tribe to munch on the heart-shaped herb, but he was the first to survive the experience as he caught the attention of a powerful entity known as Bast, the Panther Spirit. And let me tell you folks, that wasn't your ordinary herbal experience. We're in ancient Wakanda after all, not modern Canada. With Bast's blessing, Mosi became the very first Black Panther. Talk about leveling up. It was around this time that Earth was dealing with some cosmic turbulence courtesy of a meteor from the Vega system. The rifts it opened up started inviting all sorts of extraterrestrial nasties like the Brood to the neighborhood. Not one to let his tribe become an all-you-can-eat buffet for these cosmic creeps, Mosi stepped in as Wakanda's defender-in-chief. And guess who else decided to crash the party? None other than Odin Borisson, the Asgardian bigwig himself. Now, Odin wasn't exactly known for tossing around compliments like confetti, but he had to admit he was pretty darn impressed with Mosi's moral moxie. And if that wasn't enough, get this, Mosi was the first person after Odin to ever lift Mjolnir, proving his worthiness during the first encounter with the rest of the Stone Age Avengers. Mosi and his crew sealed away a colossal Celestial, saving the day like it was just another Wednesday. They faced off against cosmic villains like Mephisto and Shumagora, making your average supervillain seem about as threatening as a fluffy kitten. But alas, all good things must come to an end. Mosi met his match in a battle against the children of Laufey and Hive, and his sacrifice marked the end of this ancient Avengers era. The team disbanded with Mosi's demise, and also caused the Wakandan people to retreat from the outside world, requesting that the Avengers forget their existence. The nation would then segment into tribes and were not reunited again until the rise of the second Black Panther, Alumo Bashenga.
And finally, in at number 1 today is Mr. Majestic. DC Comics' Mr. Majestic, also known as Magistros, is a character of immense power and capability that often surprises readers with the extent of his abilities. Hailing from an advanced alien race known as the Cherubim, Majestic possesses superhuman strength, speed, and durability that rivals even the mightiest of superheroes. Unlike the lesser cast, however, he is a Cherubim of Imperial blood, meaning he has a host of cosmic tier physical and mental abilities. Majestic has demonstrated the power to manipulate matter and energy at a molecular level, able to discharge any manner of energy he has on hand however he sees fit, rearranging the subatomic structure of objects, or charging his fists with energy to increase his punching strength. Speaking of strength though, he has rearranged most of the planets in the solar system by just pushing them from his own power, and has crushed graphite into diamonds in order to pay for a meal, which those two things are very, very different. On top of all of that though, Majestic is basically Wildstorm's analog for Superman and shares a lot of the same abilities as the Man of Steel. And when interacting with the rest of the DC multiverse, he's considered to be an alternate Earth Superman. Oh, and he makes this list because, being a cherubim, he is about 10,000 years old.